Joined now by the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Pat McFadden. Mr McFadden, I just want to play you a quote from Keir Starmer that comes from May 2022. This was the midst of the Partygate scandal. Just have a listen.
The value symbolised by the door of number 10 must be restored. The game is up. You cannot be a lawmaker and a lawbreaker. Only then can the government function again. Only then can the rot be carved out. Only then can we restore the dignity of that great office and the democracy that it represents.
You cannot be a lawmaker and a lawbreaker, Mr McFadden. So can I ask, what on earth Keir Starmer, as a former Director of Public Prosecutions, was thinking in appointing a convicted fraudster to his cabinet?
Well, that quote that you played, I think, was probably in the middle of Partygate, when the Prime Minister and indeed the Chancellor of the day were being fined at that time for things they did in office for breaking the law. What we've never said is that someone who has some past conviction which is now spent can never serve in Parliament. That's never been the case. Now, I don't know the exact conversations that took place last Thursday between Louise Haigh and Keir Starmer. The upshot is that she has resigned and we've got a new Transport Secretary. But the clip that you played me there was about law-breaking while serving in office. And that's what he was talking about during that clip.
Well, if it's not a problem to have a lawbreaker serving in office, why has she had to resign? We understand from both her team and indeed Downing Street that Keir Starmer was aware of this conviction when she was appointed to Cabinet. So was it OK for Keir Starmer to know privately, but then problematic for people to know publicly that this had happened? What changed?
Well, as I say, I'm not party to the conversations that took place last Thursday between Louise Haigh and the Prime Minister when this story came to light. There may have been some new information there, I don't know. But the result of that was that Louise Haigh decided to resign late on Thursday night. She said in her resignation letter she didn't want this to go on and be a long drawn-out saga, a distraction for the government, as she put it. And I think that's quite a contrast between the way this was dealt with and the way some of these things have been dealt with in the past, where they have dragged out, they have become a big distraction. But here we are, a couple of days on from it. She has resigned. I'm sorry to see her go. Louise Haigh was a good colleague, but we have a new Transport Secretary in place now, Heidi Alexander, who I think will do a really good job.
But this suggests that this has only happened, that her resignation and conversations have only taken place because the story ended up in the media. So what it speaks to is this idea that the Prime Minister has one set of morals which he puts on display publicly, but privately a whole different set of values. And we saw this with Donagate, didn't we? This sort of idea of Keir Starmer on one hand being morally upstanding, criticising Boris Johnson and others for impropriety in office, while secretly taking donations from Lord Ali, making sure that Sue Gray had sorted him out with a Downing Street pass. So it's one thing in public and another thing in private. In what world does this make you any different from the past Conservative administration that you spent months and years criticising?
I think the equivalence you're drawing there doesn't stack up at all. The previous Conservative administration were breaking the rules in Parliament to defend somebody who'd been guilty of breaking the lobbying rules. They wasted billions on COVID fraud and waste, and they organised a series of parties while telling the rest of the country they had to stay indoors and live a very strict lifestyle at the time. So I don't accept there's equivalence between these things. And when you look, as I say, at the speed with which this was dealt with on Thursday compared to all the inquiries and everything that we had to have with some of those past things, it's much faster. It shows that he wants to act on these things.
Act on his own mistakes
when they come to light.
Why did he appoint a convicted fraudster to Cabinet? Why did he do that? He's a former director of public prosecutions.
Look, I'm not party to everything that's been disclosed at every stage of this. I don't think this is just a matter, as you put it a wee minute ago, of it becoming something in the press. But whatever the conversations have been, however the information has come out, in the end, she's resigned now. We've got a new transport secretary, and we'll carry on with the transport agenda.
But this is the other thing. OK, you don't know why he decided to promote a convicted fraudster to cabinet. Fair enough. But a convicted fraudster was promoted to cabinet without the public being told. How on earth can this be presented as more honest and decent politics? He stood on the steps of Downing Street promising change, promising a higher moral tone. He's promoted a convicted fraudster to cabinet and not told the public. The public's only found out thanks to the Times and Sky News.
Well, look, as I say, I don't know exactly what was disclosed at every stage of this, so I'm not sure.
Nothing
exactly
was disclosed to the public. The public found out this week.
The upshot is she's resigned.
Right.
Yes, the public found out this week, but what I'm saying is before that, I don't know what was disclosed at every stage of this. The important thing is we have a new Transport Secretary in place. OK, look,
let's look at Labour's record in office so far. We've got removing pensioners' winter fuel allowance whilst giving train drivers 15%. We now find out that the Work and Pension Secretary, Liz Kendall's been claiming 350 quid a month in energy costs for her Leicestershire home. Presumably a lot of you are doing that. We'll have to consider the morality of that itself. We've had Donagate, we've had Rosie Duffield resigning, we've had the Chagos Islands handed back to Mauritius and huge controversy. We've had Sue Gray, Chief of Staff, resigning after it was revealed that she had given donor Lord Ali a pass to Downing Street. We've had the employers' NIC contributions increased, a broken manifesto promise if ever there was one. We've had suggestions that the Chancellor has lied on her CV. We've had IHT applied to farmers and a massive protest in Parliament. And now we've had Louise Haigh's resignation. Can we be honest, Mr McFadden? You've been in politics a long, long time. This has been an absolutely disastrous start to the Labour administration, hasn't it?
Not at all. We've had a good increase in the minimum
Mr.
wage.
McFadden.
We've had more help for carers. We've had a freeze in the fuel duty. We've protected the pay slips of people as we said we would in our manifesto. We've had a lot to sort out. You're right. Had to sort out a collapsing prison system. We're having to start to get the NHS waiting list down. We've got legislation going through on transport that we talked about earlier. We've got a big agenda, and this week we're going to take that forward with a new plan for change, setting out key priorities in health, in education, in living standards, in energy, in safety on our streets, so that the public know exactly what the priorities are after the big budget that we had just a few weeks ago. That's going to be a good plan for the country. It's also going to change the way that the state works, because we've got to be doing that too, so that we get value for money and deliver for the British public.
But Mr McFadden, you've mentioned there huge waiting lists in the NHS. You've said that the police system is broken. We've heard in the past your rhetoric around the prison service being broken as well. And in your infinite wisdom, you decide that this is a good time to legalise assisted dying, with all those different institutions on their knees.
Well, this was a private member's bill brought forward, and I think we should treat this very seriously. I was there in the vote on Friday. I saw how seriously people were taking this, whether they were for it or against it. There has been a debate going on about this in the country for some years. It was brought forward through a private member's bill. Now that Parliament's voted on that on Friday, it will go into committee. It will be considered in much more detail now, like every other piece of legislation, and it should be, because it's such a serious issue. And the House of Commons will have to vote on it again in a few months' time. So this bill, this big and serious measure, will be properly and fully considered clause by clause now, as it should be. And even though we had the vote on Friday, I still think there's probably a long way to go before this becomes law.
Well, one wonders why it had to be so rushed through. This has been something that's been debated for years and years and years. Comparatively, Parliament spent 700 hours discussing and debating banning hunting with dogs. We've got assisted dying now set to be legalised on the basis of 5 hours of debate. Even if you look over to Australia, where there are comparatively far, far fewer MPs, they debated assisted dying through the night for more than a week. What was the urgency here?
Well, it won't just be 5 hours, because it now goes into committee for 4 months, where it will be considered clause by clause, as it should be for a measure like this. Parliament will vote again and debate it again after that period, probably May or June next year, something around that time, and then it will all have to be done again in the House of Lords. So it won't be rushed, it will be fully and properly considered. And as I say, even though the House of Commons voted for it on Friday, I still think the bill's got a lot of parliamentary stages and a lot of things to consider before it fully becomes law.
All right. Mr. McFadden, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. Really grateful for you coming on.